Ford just made a decision that quietly changes everything about the electric vehicle argument, and almost nobody noticed it happen. While every YouTuber and news outlet was busy arguing about whether EVs are the future or a dead end, Ford's engineers were building something in the background that makes that entire argument pointless. It's not a bigger battery, it's not a faster charger, it's a new engine. And it's not even trying to compete with electric motors, it's working with them. And once you understand what this engine actually does, you'll see why it might be the smartest move any car company has made in the last decade. Let's get into it. For the last 5 years, the conversation around Ford has been the same conversation over and over. Ford loses billions on electric vehicles. Ford cuts electric vehicle production. Ford brings back gas trucks. Ford is confused about its own strategy. That narrative sounds simple, and simple narratives get clicks, but they're not accurate. What actually happened at Ford over the past year is far more interesting than the idea that electric vehicles failed or that gas wins. Ford took a hard look at its numbers, took a charge of $19.5 billion, tied mostly to restructuring its electric vehicle plans, and then did something most companies in this position never do. Instead of picking a side in the gas versus electric fight, they built a powertrain designed to make the fight irrelevant. The vehicle at the center of this is the F-150 Lightning, and understanding why Ford changed it tells you almost everything about where the entire industry is heading. The original Lightning was Ford's flagship proof that a full-size electric truck could work. It sold well early on, moved over 33,000 units in its best year, and got praised by reviewers for how it drove. But it never turned a profit, and sales started sliding hard once EV tax credits disappeared, and charging anxiety kept showing up in customer feedback. Ford didn't kill the Lightning nameplate. They killed the battery-only version of it and replaced it with something that solves the actual problem truck owners kept complaining about. That replacement is called an EREV, which stands for Extended Range Electric Vehicle, and this is the part most people don't understand correctly. An EREV is not a hybrid. In a normal hybrid like the F-150 Power Boost, a gasoline V6 engine and an electric motor, both physically send power to the wheels together. They work as a team, pushing the truck forward. An EREV works completely differently. In the new Lightning, the truck is still driven 100% by electric motors all the time, no exceptions. The gasoline engine never touches the wheels. It never sends a single ounce of mechanical power to the drivetrain. Instead, that small onboard engine has exactly one job: spin a generator that recharges the battery while you drive. Think of it less like a hybrid car and more like a diesel locomotive, where a combustion engine generates electricity and electric motors do all the actual moving. Why does that distinction matter so much? Because it means the new Lightning keeps every single thing people loved about driving an electric truck. The instant torque is still there. The smooth, silent acceleration is still there. The truck still drives like an EV in every meaningful way, because it is one. What changes is what happens when the battery starts running low. Instead of hunting for a charging station and waiting 30 or 40 minutes, you just keep driving, and the gas engine quietly keeps the battery topped up using regular fuel from a regular gas station. Ford is estimating a combined range north of 700 miles once the battery and the range-extending engine are both factored in, compared to roughly 320 miles on the outgoing all-electric version. That's not a small improvement. That's more than doubling the usable range of the truck without asking the customer to change a single thing about how they drive it. Ford is also promising that towing capability won't take the usual EV hit. Battery electric trucks have always struggled with towing because pulling heavy loads drains a battery far faster than normal driving, which is exactly when range anxiety becomes a real problem instead of a hypothetical one. Ford's language around the new Lightning has specifically pointed to towing performance that holds up over long hauls, describing the truck as capable of pulling heavy loads the way a locomotive does, powerful and steady, rather than straining. If that holds up in real-world testing, it directly attacks the single biggest reason contractors, ranchers, and RV owners have avoided electric trucks until now. There's another detail here that a lot of people miss, and it's honestly one of the most practical parts of the whole design. The current Lightning already had the ability to export power, meaning you could plug tools, appliances, or even parts of your house into the truck and use it as a backup power source during an outage. The new extended range electric vehicle version keeps that feature and arguably makes it more useful, because now that exportable power is not limited by how much charge happens to be sitting in the battery when the outage hits. With a gas engine on board acting as a generator, the truck can keep producing power for far longer, which turns it into something closer to a mobile power plant than a vehicle that happens to have a power outlet. Think about what that actually means for the kind of person who buys a work truck. A contractor running power tools at a remote job site with no outlets nearby used to have to choose between a gas generator sitting in the bed or a battery that would eventually run dry with no way to refill it on site. Now, the truck itself is the generator, and it can keep making electricity as long as there's fuel in the tank, which for most people means it basically never runs out during a normal workday. Same story for someone living somewhere that loses power every winter storm. Instead of a battery that drains down over a few days sitting unused in the driveway, you've got a truck that can keep the lights and the fridge running as long as you're willing to keep feeding it gasoline. That's a genuinely different value proposition than either a pure gas truck or a pure electric one offered on its own. It's also worth talking about what Ford isn't saying yet, because that tells you something too. Ford has been unusually quiet about the exact size and output of the range-extending engine itself. We know it exists. We know its only job is spinning a generator, and we know it's small enough to fit alongside a large battery pack without turning the truck into something bulky or overweight. Compare that to the current Power Boost hybrid, which uses a 3.5-liter V6 mechanically tied into the drivetrain to help push the truck forward. The extended range electric vehicle's engine doesn't need anywhere near that kind of mechanical complexity because it never has to handle the stress of directly moving a loaded truck up a grade. It just needs to spin steadily and efficiently, which is a much easier engineering problem than building an engine that has to be everything to everyone. That's part of why range extender engines like this one can often be smaller and simpler than a full hybrid powertrain, even while producing a similarly meaningful benefit for the driver. The production side of this story matters too, because it tells you Ford isn't treating this as a side project or a science experiment. The next generation Lightning extended range electric vehicle is set to be assembled at the Rouge Electric Vehicle Center in Dearborn, Michigan, the same dedicated facility that built the original all-electric version. Ford didn't need to build a brand new plant or retool an existing gas truck line from scratch to make this happen, because the underlying vehicle architecture, the battery, and the electric motors are largely shared with what they were already building. The engine and generator system essentially bolts onto an existing electric vehicle platform, which is a big part of why Ford could pivot this fast without starting over. That's a very different situation than a company trying to bolt electric motors onto a gas truck that was never designed for that kind of setup in the first place. If this setup sounds familiar, that's because Ford isn't the only manufacturer chasing this idea. Stellantis has been developing something similar for its Ram 1500 lineup, using a 3.6-liter V6 as the generator engine to charge the truck's battery pack, with reported output figures in the range of 647 horsepower and 610 pound-feet of torque when the electric and generator systems are combined. Chevrolet actually planted the flag on this concept over a decade ago with the original Volt, which used a small gas engine purely to extend range rather than to drive the wheels directly. What's different now is scale. Back then, this technology lived in a compact sedan, built mostly to prove a concept. Now it's being scaled up into full-size heavy-duty pickup trucks, which is a completely different engineering challenge and a completely different market. So why is this such a big deal for the broader electric vehicle debate? And why do I keep saying it quietly ended that debate rather than just changed one truck? Because for years, the entire conversation has been framed as a binary choice. You are either Team Electric, chasing zero emissions and instant torque while accepting charging limitations, or you are Team Gas, sticking with proven range and fast refueling while accepting higher running costs and emissions. Car forums, comment sections, and honestly a huge chunk of automotive YouTube have built entire identities around defending one side of that argument. What Ford just did was build a truck that makes the question itself kind of meaningless. It drives like an electric vehicle, it refuels like a gas truck. It does not ask you to compromise on the thing that made you want an electric vehicle in the first place, and it does not ask you to accept the thing that scared you away from one either. This is not a one-off gimmick either. It is part of a much bigger shift in Ford's overall strategy that most casual observers have not connected the dots on. Ford has stated publicly that by 2030, it expects roughly half of its global sales volume to come from hybrids, extended-range electric vehicles, and fully electric vehicles combined, up from just 17% in 2025. That is a massive jump in 5 years. But notice what that number actually includes. It is not half of Ford's lineup will be pure electric vehicles. It is a blended mix with extended-range electric vehicle technology like the Lightning's new powertrain sitting right in the middle as the bridge between old and new. Ford President and CEO Jim Farley has described this shift as a customer-driven change built around what buyers are actually asking dealerships for, rather than what regulators or activists on either side of the debate want them to buy. At the same time Ford was reworking the Lightning, they were also quietly building something else entirely, something aimed at a completely different problem. Ford has a next-generation architecture called the Universal Electric Vehicle Platform, developed by a small, previously secretive engineering team based in Long Beach, California, staffed heavily with veterans pulled from Formula One racing and from companies like Tesla. This platform isn't about range extenders or generators at all. It's about making pure battery electric vehicles dramatically cheaper and more efficient to build. The first vehicle riding on this new platform is expected to be a mid-size electric pickup starting around $30,000 using lithium iron phosphate battery cells, which are cheaper and more durable than the battery chemistry used in most higher-end electric vehicles today. Ford claims the truck will be roughly 15% more aerodynamically efficient than any mid-size gas truck currently sold in America, and that it will use a manufacturing technique called gigacasting to shrink the number of structural parts from around 146 pieces down to just 2. That's the kind of manufacturing shift that doesn't just save a little money, it fundamentally changes what a company can afford to sell a vehicle for. Put those two projects side by side and the strategy becomes obvious. On one end, Ford is using range extender technology to fix the biggest complaint about big, expensive electric trucks, limited range, and towing anxiety. On the other end, they are using an entirely new manufacturing platform to fix the biggest complaint about electric vehicles in general: price. They are not retreating from electric vehicles. They are attacking the two specific problems that have been slowing electric vehicle adoption down from two completely different directions at the same time. None of this is happening in a vacuum either. The broader electric vehicle market has been cooling off, and Ford knows it. Industry data has pointed to a slowdown in electric vehicle adoption heading into this year, made worse in the United States by the expiration of federal electric vehicle tax credits that used to knock thousands of dollars off the sticker price. Meanwhile, Chinese manufacturers like BYD have been expanding aggressively, especially in Europe, where registration numbers have been climbing fast even as Ford's own European sales have been sliding. Farley himself has publicly called Chinese automakers an existential threat to the North American auto industry, which is a pretty blunt thing for a chief executive officer to say out loud, That kind of pressure does not leave room for ideology. It forces a company to build whatever actually sells, whatever actually solves a real problem for a real customer, regardless of which side of the electric vehicle debate that customer happens to be standing on. It also helps explain why Ford leans so heavily on lithium iron phosphate batteries for its cheaper upcoming electric vehicle lineup instead of sticking exclusively with the higher density battery chemistry used in most premium electric vehicles today. Farley has pointed out that some of the cheaper Chinese electric vehicle competitors are winning on cost, partly because their battery and control systems are simpler and less expensive to produce, even if they are heavier and less efficient. Ford's answer was not to out-engineer them with something more exotic and more expensive. It was to match their cost advantage using proven, durable battery technology while using smarter aerodynamics and lighter manufacturing to make up the difference in efficiency. That is a very deliberate, very competitive response, not the move of a company that has given up on electrification. There's a small but telling detail buried in how this new, low-cost EV platform came together too. The team responsible for it started out as a quiet, almost hidden group working out of a facility in Long Beach, away from Ford's main operations, deliberately kept small so it could move fast without getting slowed down by the usual layers of approval inside a massive company. Several of the engineers involved came directly from Formula One programs or from companies known for lean, fast-moving engineering cultures. That's not the profile of a team assembled to quietly wind a project down. It's the profile of a team built to solve a hard problem quickly, which lines up with everything else Ford has been doing this past year. Move fast, cut what isn't working, and double down on what actually addresses a real customer complaint. There's a financial angle here too that's easy to overlook if you're just watching for new trucks. Ford raised its adjusted operating profit guidance to around $7 billion, even while absorbing those massive EV-related restructuring charges, and it's planning to hire thousands of new workers to support this shift, including new production at plants in Tennessee and Ohio for trucks and vans. That's not the behavior of a company that's panicking or retreating. That's the behavior of a company that took a financial hit on one bet, learned exactly what went wrong, and is now redeploying that capital into a strategy that's actually built around what customers have been telling dealerships they want for years. So when I say this engine quietly ended the EV debate, here's exactly what I mean. The argument was never really about electric motors versus gasoline engines as pieces of hardware. It was about range, cost, charging convenience, and towing confidence. Ford's new range-extending engine in the Lightning attacks range and towing confidence head-on by keeping the electric driving experience intact while erasing the charging anxiety that made people hesitate. Their new universal EV platform attacks cost head-on by rethinking how the vehicle gets built from the ground up. Neither of these solutions asks you to pick a side. They just quietly dissolve the reasons the sides existed in the first place. Most people are going to keep arguing about electric vehicles versus gas trucks in comment sections for years to come because that argument has become part of a lot of people's identity at this point. And identity-based arguments don't die just because the technology moved past them. But if you're actually paying attention to what the engineers are building instead of what the internet is arguing about, you can see where this is really heading. It's not a future where electric wins and gas loses, or where gas wins and electric fades away. It's a future where the two technologies quietly merge into the same machine, and the customer never has to think about which side they're supposed to be defending anymore. If you found this breakdown useful, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because Ford, GM, and Stellantis are all racing to roll out their own versions of this exact strategy over the next 2 years, and I'll be covering every single one of them as the details come out. Drop a comment and let me know. Honestly, if a truck drove exactly like an EV but never left you stranded looking for a charger, would that change your mind about going electric? I really want to know where you land on this. And if you know someone who's been going back and forth on whether to buy an EV, a hybrid, or stick with gas, send them this video. Because this Ford strategy might be the exact answer they've been waiting for without even knowing it existed yet. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.